All right, here we go. Welcome back, Micah Dank. Good to see you again, man. Happy New Year. How have you been?
I've been great, man. How are you, man? You took a break, right?
Took a break. Yeah, I moved to Texas, took a break from podcasting.
Where did you go from?
I was from Connecticut. I grew up there, and I mean, I was ready for something new. I think COVID really pushed me away. And I got to go visit my family for Christmas. That was interesting. Never traveled for the holidays before, but the South is such a different place, and I'm happy to be here, man. But I know you've been a
Nice.
very busy guy. It's been quite a year for you, 2022, 2023. I want to fill people in because I did interview you last year. It's episode 17. And if people don't really know who Micah Dank is, give them your introduction, man. Welcome.
So I am an astrotheologist. What that basically means is I take what the astrotheology basically means is it's the mythology of the zodiac and all the constellations and how it's applied to ancient sacred holy texts. And I have found a code. I know this is such a bold statement, but I have found a code that is encoded in everything from the Sumerian tablets to the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Jewish, the Christian, the Muslim texts. All of it. I found a code that works on all of it. In fact, I just did another Sumerian tablet this morning because I'm going on Leak Project around like 4 p.m. today to show it.
Nice.
So that's basically what I do. I have a 8 book series called Into the Rabbit Hole, where I basically explain all that stuff as well as explain a bunch of hidden occult and esoteric knowledge, as well as hidden knowledge that they're keeping from us in like publics. And that's basically what the book series is. I have a kids book out, which is an intro to astrotheology for 6 to 11-year-olds called A is for Aries. And I've got one more book in the series, and then I'm going to wrap it up as a 9 book series.
Nice. Nine is a very fitting number to end it on, man. And it's pretty cool because last year I interviewed you back when I only had the first book read, and now I've gone through seven of them. The eighth has just been released, right? It was like just
Yeah.
recently put out. You want to tell us a little bit more about number eight?
Well, it's a series, so it's
Mhm.
basically Da Vinci Code because Dan Brown's a huge influence on me. The cryptograms, the anagrams, the puzzles. I put all the esoteric knowledge into those. I've
Mm.
encoded my books the same way. It's like it's like Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown writings mixed with George Orwell's 1984, just like truth and fiction. And you've read 7 of them, so what do you think of them so far?
Well, I've got a couple questions. One book in particular really stuck out to me was and I'm gonna try to tread carefully and avoid spoilers because I really want people to
Right.
check it out. But so we were just chatting about our good mutual friend Brandon Thomas from Expanding Reality, and we had a really great chat about Antarctica. And there's a particular portion of your series where these characters go to Antarctica. They funny they meet up with the flat Earth crew, and then there's so the question I want to ask you about that in particular is that if someone stopped you on the street and was like, "Hey, Micah, what do you think about Antarctica? Like, what's going on down there? What can we look for? Because most people know
Well,
about Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd, but is there something more that you think people might want to check out for themselves?"
so there's a Hollow Earth. There is a Hollow Earth that has come out. Bird's nephew, actually, I believe, has come out with some crazy information.
Mm.
Um, I get fed information from people on my YouTube channel too, but basically it was discovered. It's a place called Agartha. That's the name of it. And it does exist. Now, my characters don't physically find that place when they go. I'm not going to spoil anything, but when they go, they're basically decoding something, and they had to get to Antarctica, and it's illegal to go to Antarctica. However, apparently the Flat Earth Society got permission to do this little excavation to find the edge of the world or find the ice wall. So my characters just hitch a ride with them. And there's some funny exchanges there. But yeah, no, it definitely does exist. There's tons of pyramids there. There's if you talk about in 1543 there was a map that was drawn, and it was an amalgamation of a bunch of other maps. It's called the Piri Reis map, It came out in 1543. In fact, it's one of the maps, um, or it draws on the maps that Columbus used.
Hmm.
Um, we know that Columbus came to America with the blessings of the Pope. He had to get it from him. He had to get the blessings from the Pope to come to America. They knew it existed. He basically came here and just pillaged everything. Um, but when you're talking about the Pierre Reese map, what it shows, and it's from 1543, is it shows the coastline of the world. And what it does is it shows Antarctica at the bottom, but it shows it that it was green and full of life.
Right.
So it's a relatively recent thing that Antarctica has just completely snowed over, or recent in as far as the grand scheme of history goes.
Mm. Now, there's an interesting parallel. I was watching a Star Trek. I think it was the Next Generation one day, and it was, it takes place hundreds, thousands of years in the future, and there was a scene on planet Earth, but it was in North Africa. In fact, I think it was right around Egypt, and basically, like the whole biosphere had turned from a desert to a rainforest, and that there was a massive
Right.
transformation over millions, or not millions of, but like over time, the Earth had terraformed, whether that was human made or not. It's cool that Gene
Right.
Roddenberry.
Well, you're seeing that in real time right now. The
Mhm.
Dead Sea in Israel is coming to life.
Yeah,
It's been doing that for about 10 years now, more than that, actually. Their fig trees are growing there. You know,
that is awesome.
yeah, things are coming back to life.
Yeah, and
The
there's
Sahara
a
Desert used to be a rainforest.
right. Yeah, and they say the same thing about the Pacific, like Oregon, Washington. It's got like the same potential that it could have been a rainforest, just like the Amazon. And there's an interesting parallel, as above, so below. I suppose that people have theories, speculations. I've seen pretty cool evidence about Mars. The planet Mars being a place that used to be like Earth. There was evidence that nuclear
It
weapons were
was.
used. Yeah, and that
Yeah, no,
creates a
there's
whole.
physical there's physical evidence of that, because if you were to take readings of the atmosphere at Mars, you'll find these radioactive isotopes that could have only been put in the atmosphere. The only way these things exist the way they do in the atmosphere is through the detonation of a nuclear explosion.
Mhm.
So Mars absolutely used to be terraformed.
Yeah. And now that brings me back to your book, a different book earlier in the series before they go to Antarctica is all about the capstones on the pyramids. And we know that there's the astrological alignment. We have, the three kings. And I'm curious, this was something that you kind of you left a great trail of breadcrumbs because I was familiar with a certain group called the Pleiadians, and I'm curious if you want to share a bit more. Maybe people have heard of that group,
Right,
that idea, and I'm curious if you
right.
kind of want to give us like a crash course on maybe more breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
How can we learn more?
yeah. So David Steele had multiple graduate degrees, and he was in the CIA, and then he left, and then he started talking about things. In fact, he was actually killed in the hospital. They gave him remdesivir during COVID.
Hmm.
I don't want to talk about vaccines. You know, that's not what I'm trying to do at all. I'm just saying that's what happened to him. And he was talking about how there's at least 100 planets with life on it that we know of. The Pleiades are one star cluster. Now, the one thing you'll realize the more you go down into rabbit holes and everything is that demons and angels do exist. They
Hmm.
do exist. Um, the Bible is not a literal text, it's a metaphorical, allegorical story, but they do exist, these creations. And some of these, in fact, when it comes to Christians, they believe that all aliens are actually demons.
Right.
That's how they kind of bring it up. When you're talking about planets with life, you have the Pleiadians, who come from the Pleiadian star sisters. They're seven planets known as the Seven Sisters.
Hmm.
So when you hear them talking about the Seven Sisters, that's what they're referring to. The Pleiadians are that, and they're a good entity that has been trying to help us raise our vibration, raise everything. See, for example, Michio Kaku talks about the Kardashev scale in physics, which is basically, or in science, which is basically the three different scales. The first group of people is people that gain their energy from things on the planet. The second group is people that are able to get energy from their mother star.
Hmm.
And then the third group of people are people who are able to get it from their all the stars, their systems. They could just survive off that energy. Um, and where we are right now is we're a type 0 civilization or a type 1. But I argue in my first book that we're actually a type 1 because we can manipulate the weather, we can control things like earthquakes, cloud seeding, things like that. Um, I'm not going to ruin the end of the first book, but there is a way that we harness the energy from the sun. Um, and The Pleiadians are trying to assist us in evolving. Because what happens is in the zodiac, what you have is you have 12 signs. Each sign is 2160 years. So the great year, as it's called, where the earth goes through all the signs, is 25,920 years.
Hmm.
And that's called the great year. And what happens is, as time comes around, as we come around the bend, we start to wake up. And as we go around towards the outer skirts of things, our civilization starts to fall asleep. And
Right.
that's kind of what happens. Um, and the Pleiadians are here to basically enlighten us. Now, the passage you're referring to, I actually just did a video on it either yesterday or the day before, where you'd be surprised how many times I reference my own books, like when I need to remember something and
It's
I just
good.
pick up because I know what book it's from.
Right.
So this is from the second book. It's the Pleiadian Message to Earth. It was channeled by Barbara Marcinek. If you guys have never gotten into channelers before, some of them are like Abraham Hicks,
Right.
Seth Speaks from Jane Roberts. Bashar is a great one. These channelers. They have a wealth of knowledge. What they do is they channel these entities. They go down to the hypnotic state and they channel these entities. So she channeled the Pleiadians and they left a message for us. And the more you start to understand how the reality of the matrix, when it breaks down, the world really is, the more that her message makes sense. So that's basically what it is, and that's basically what I entered it into. But you haven't mentioned my fourth book, which I wrote in 2017, which basically predicted 2020 to
Yeah, I
2023. I
mean, you
don't
had
know if you
mentioned
noticed
like
that.
you don't want to talk about jabs and Pfizer and Moderna, but it is pretty spooky. And dude, it's kind of funny. So, I was driving from Connecticut to Texas, and I had a bunch of podcasts queued up, and one of them was you had a great interview with Miguel Connor on AM Bite Gnostic Radio. Shout out to Miguel. You were talking about Pangea's Pandemic, which is book number 4, and it's crazy
Right.
because you were saying, you wrote this way before the actual COVID-19 pandemic
I wrote
began.
it in 2017. I had to put a disclaimer.
Yeah. Now, that's
I had
kind
to
of like
put
a
a
great
disclaimer.
segue to like when you're thinking about how fiction interacts with reality. Do you have you ever heard of
Oh yeah.
hyperstition?
No.
Hyperstition is sort of like the idea, superstition is like, you're thinking about something, like you see a black cat and you feel like
Right.
you're
Right. Right.
unlucky. Hyperstition is kind of like when you write something down or you put something out, then it's almost creating, it's like that law of attraction principle. Now, I'm not
Well, I would
saying
hate to think that I manifested
right, and I'm
that.
not
That's not a really
alluding to
cool
that.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. We want to manifest, the best possible world, but I'm curious, in a different sense, how has your writing affected your real life? Like, so when people on your Facebook or your YouTube write to you and they say, Micah, thank you, you've helped me release from religious guilt, or you've
Right.
changed the way that I think about the celestial bodies. What else, like, how would you respond if someone asked, like, how have you personally changed now that you've put these 8 books out
Well,
and
I've been very open on my channel. I tell you that you have to go through hell in order to come out the other side.
yeah.
Jordan Peterson is actually my Facebook background, and well, not him. That would be weird, but like one of his quotes, and he's talking about. He says the pathway to enlightenment is necessitated through a pathway through hell. That's why there's not so many enlightened people. And
Mm.
you do have to have a complete mental breakdown when you break free from the matrix. You do. You have to. It's part of the process. It's part of the healing process. And some people come out of it and some people never do. You
Mm.
know, I'm just one of the lucky ones. But yeah, that's what I basically do is I try and share all the information that I know. I started a YouTube channel about 6 months ago, and I just started sharing all this information. Um, but so in book 4,
Mm.
right? Um, the company that creates this issue is called Bionic Edge. Well, Bionic Edge is just an anagram for Biogen, which is a company I used to work for and had a horrible experience for. They were a pharmaceutical company.
Oh
In
wow.
fact, they made drugs like Tecfidera, which are basically anti-multiple sclerosis medications,
Mm.
and that's basically what they did. And turns out that they got caught bribing doctors during the time period that I was there, and they ended up having to pay $965 million. So there's that. I've also, in my book series, I predicted that something was going to happen to Salman Rushdie, who, if you guys don't know who he is, he's the one that wrote the Satanic Verses, which the Ayatollah Khomeini put a fatwa on him, which is basically a mark on his head.
Mm.
And how it basically works is that he died before he removed it, so it could never be removed because it could only be removed by the person that puts it on there.
Mm.
And then some guy recently just like attacked him. There's just been all sorts of, like, the pyramids being energy devices, like that's come out recently.
Right.
There's just a lot that are in my book series that is just a little bit ahead of its time. Um, Talk about mapping out the DMT realm in book
Mm.
4 as
Yeah.
well, I think. And they're starting to do that now. You know, there's just a lot of things that, you know, you could just see pipeline. You know, I tell people, look, if you want to get in tune with things, if you want to start to understand um, how things really work, and you want to really be able to see where we're going, you have to do a couple of things. And I usually get pushback on this, but these are from people who are slaves to their addictions. I tell people
Mm.
you have to completely quit alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol is a depressant. Okay, it comes from the words alcohol, which means mind-eating spirits. That's why they're called spirits when you
Right.
drink them. It lowers your vibration. It lowers your vibration. What happens is when you drink alcohol, it brings you to your reptilian midbrain
Mm.
because you turn into an animal. Because what are the 3 things you think about with alcohol? And the only 3 things you think about food, you think about sex, and
Sex.
you think about sleep. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's all you think about when you drink. It's how do I satisfy these primal urges? Um, so you get rid of that. I tell people to buy non-scented candles and stare at the flame for 30 minutes a day. It wakes you up. I tell people to use binaural beats. I tell people to, there's an app on the iPhone called 432,
Mm.
where basically, you know, the whole thing where music changed from 432 hertz, which is a harmonic frequency, into a 440, which is
Right.
disharmonic. You know about all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this app filters your music and plays it through 432. So I tell people to use that. I tell people to quit masturbating. I didn't tell
Mm-hmm.
people to quit having sex, although
Right. There's a
if you're
difference
going to
there.
have sex,
Yes.
if you have sex, you're going to try and have it with someone that you really care about. I'm not even going to say you have to date them, but just that you care about,
Mm-hmm.
because you imprint on each other. And masturbation is just a artificial dopamine flood. And there's a lot of things that I tell people to do, but once you do all these things, you'll find it frees your mind, it frees your life, it frees your depression. I tell people with depression and anxiety that the cure for it, it's okay if you need medicine to help. I get that. Some people do, some people don't. It's not for everyone. There are no blanket statements that you can make on anything in this
Yeah.
world that work for every single person. That's the problem with politics, is they work on
Mm-hmm.
extremes. But when I tell people about the cure for depression and the cure for anxiety, it's called creation. You know, make a
Yes.
podcast, write a
Yeah.
book, create a child. You know, have
Mm-hmm.
a purpose. That's what it is. People just use these distractions. They use these alcoholic and the drug distractions. And I'm not talking about consciousness expanding things
Mm.
like mushrooms or DMT. That's different. Although you should be in the right state of mind. Even with
True.
marijuana,
They could
there's
all be
people
abused.
who There's people who like take marijuana who get very, very paranoid, and these people don't
Hmm.
have control over their thoughts. I tell people, I say, look, you are not your thoughts. See, this is where I differ with the religious people, because a Christian will tell you that if they had a bad thought, it's in the Bible. They will tell you that if they're married and they see a pretty woman walking down the street and they have a bad thought, that it's either Satan or they sinned and they've committed lust in their heart.
Mm.
You're not responsible for your thoughts. Thoughts don't do anything until you manifest them into
Right.
action. So I tell people, you are what at the end of the day, you have to pay your karma back
Mm.
based on your action and your intention, not your thoughts. So when you have a negative thought and it comes into your mind, you could do one of two things. You could either allow it to completely consume you by having this thought and then being like, oh my God, even if it came out of nowhere or if you manufactured it, it can consume you, or you could just observe the thought and then it goes away.
Hmm.
So I tell people, if you're going to do spiritual enhancing psychedelics, make sure that you have your thoughts in order.
Yeah.
Make sure you know how to deal with your thoughts. And I help a lot of people with that too.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you had a really cool video on the cannabis point about the paranoia, and it's kind of funny because it always goes back to that quote from Bob Marley. I think he's like the herb or whatever medicine, but in this case, cannabis. The herb will reveal yourself to you, or
Yeah.
reveals you
You
to
can't
yourself.
hide from yourself.
Yeah.
You can't hide from yourself. Like there's another thing too, is that I have a tattoo that says like live without regrets. And I know
Mm.
that's a tacky one, but for me it's not, because everything that's ever happened to me, every decision I've ever made has led me to this exact point right now where I
Mm.
am. And if you feel the same way and you're happy with who you are, then you have to accept your whole life as part of who you are, because there
That's
are people
huge.
who lie down in bed. There's people who lie down in bed at night and their mind just starts reminding them of all the embarrassing and dumb and horrible shit that they've done in their life. And they don't know how to just observe their thoughts. So it
Mm.
keeps them up at night and then it drives them nuts. These are not the kind of people that you want to do consciousness expanding things,
Oh
because
no.
it's just going to turn the mirror inward.
Yeah, I feel very lucky because pretty early on I discovered on the YouTube rabbit holes Alan Watts, and at the same time
Love
I
Alan
was
Watts.
getting interested in Terrence McKenna and trying these things for myself. But Alan Watts was like he was balancing my worldview because as chaotic as things can get in that psychedelic space, you have to find a way to ground yourself and practice
Right.
Zen to put one particular name on it. And speaking of that, I kind of wanted to ask you because the psychedelic space is very, very similar to the near-death experience space.
Right.
And I've been thinking a lot about astrotheology, how I've seen you on YouTube decode cross-culturally a bunch of different texts. You just brought up the Sumerian tablets. We could do this with the Hindu scriptures.
Oh, hold on
Any
a second. Hold on a second. Time out.
yes,
I have not personally done Eastern.
yes,
My
I
my
yeah,
focus is my focus mostly has been on Western,
done on
though I
Western.
have read things like the Upanishads and some of the Vedic texts.
Yeah.
Um, this code so far, I have only applied it to there's just so much to do. And when
Yeah.
you're good at something, you just kind of, I want to get them all done. I want to
Right,
do everything.
right. Yeah,
Uh,
on your YouTube channel, you can find a lot of great Western material. I was just kind of saying, like, you could apply this anywhere. And if you take a scenario, and I'd love to hear you comment on this, like, if you have four people in a vehicle, or let's say a boat, and one is an atheist, one is a Hindu, one is a Christian, and one is a Muslim, and the boat sinks and they all drown, or they almost drown, and they all have a near-death experience and they're having this visionary experience, they're all going to see something different based on how their worldview is colored and filled in by
well,
that.
maybe not. Sometimes it might be, hold on a second, it might not reinforce it. Sometimes it might actually go against it.
Yeah, it could
People
go
put a
against
lot,
it.
people put a lot of effort into things like dreams and
Mm,
near-death experiences because they think they're talking to them.
mm,
Um, what you have to realize, what people have to realize, is that if you're attached to your skin color, your gender, your name, your religion that you
mm.
might have been born into, then you have, or your nationality, where you're from, then you have absolutely no idea who you are.
True.
You don't.
Yeah.
These things do not identify you. So now, when you're talking about near-death experiences with these people, one might see Muhammad in their near-death experience. One might see Jesus. And I'm telling you, it's not that they're seeing them. What they're seeing is an archetype,
Mm-hmm.
because what these entities do when they come to you is they visit you in one of two ways. When you have a near death experience and you see all your family members, or you see a family member, or you see Jesus, right? You're not actually seeing that. I know it's a hallucination, so it's not that you're not seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is these entities that come to guide you and heal you and change your life, what they do is they come as Jungian archetypes, or they come as archetypes that are peaceful or malevolent in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're scared of like the Hat Man might come to you. Or if you're a Christian, you might see Jesus, because these entities will come to you as things that you are familiar with in order to for you to be comfortable.
Right.
Because you know all those mentions in the Bible of the angels having like 4 million eyeballs.
Yeah, they sound terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, see, like if one of those fucking things came to me, I don't know what I would do, but what it'll do is it'll come as your grandma, so that
Mm-hmm.
you can deal with it.
Yeah, you can
That's
like
basically
calmly
what it is. Yeah,
process that. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's really interesting. Yeah.
what people don't realize is near death experiences, and when you're dying, I'm literally talking about as your body is shutting down,
Mm-hmm.
and near death experiences. What you're going to realize is that your body floods with DMT.
Correct.
Okay, your body floods with DMT twice in your life: when you're in REM sleep, that causes you to dream,
Mm-hmm.
and it so that's every night basically, unless you do things like alcohol where that's disrupted. That's why
Yeah,
people don't have peaceful sleeps when they're up. They're demons. That's why they
exactly.
have very wild. They're moving all over the place and they're
Mm-hmm.
not getting restful
Chaos.
sleep.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, DMT floods your body, and you have an experience. And these are life changing at times, to be honest with you.
Mm.
But you have to understand what it is you're looking at.
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. It could be very confusing. There's so many different symbols or archetypes that could pop up in the dreamscape, but it's interesting too because when you think about DMT, and this is a topic that has been discussed quite a lot in the last decade, is DMT reminds me of the fact that we all carry this divine spark within us, and that
Yeah,
everyone's born with it, everyone will die with it, and we are releasing it every night, like you said. And it's especially important, like if you, I think last time we spoke about chrism, and
yeah,
earlier when you talked about avoiding alcohol, avoiding masturbation, it's like we're thinking about the lower chakras.
right.
And if you can break through into the creative center, that maybe the solar plexus, which is interesting, I want to ask you, the solar plexus points directly to the sun. And that has always fascinated me. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. When you do things like masturbation, you're talking about your root chakra,
Mm-hmm.
which is the red one. It starts red at the bottom and it goes to purple on top. It's the rainbow. Okay,
Right.
that's why you have infra, which means under, red, and ultra, which means above, violet. So infrared and ultraviolet. This is a real thing. It's a real science.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do things like masturbation and stuff, what you're doing is you're not allowing your chrism, the sacred oil, to rise. What you're doing is you're keeping it in your uh, lower root chakra. See, what happens when a man masturbates is it depletes your energy.
Mm-hmm.
It depletes your chi. Okay, after sex, men fall asleep,
Right.
whereas women are energized. It doesn't work for women. Women have a completely different set of laws that they run by.
Mm-hmm.
It actually empowers women, whereas men, it depletes you. Um, and so, but as far as yeah, everything is connected to the sun. Everything has always been about the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has always been about the sun. Jesus is no different. Jesus is the sun. He's the only person who's been anthropomorphized as a living being, whereas everybody else was just the god in the heavens or the solar god. But this all began with I've traced it back to the Sumerians. That's basically what it is.
Nice. Yeah. Then there's bunch of cool correspondences you could dive into. Like I know one day we were chatting, like texting, and I asked you about the 12 labors of Hercules because that's one other archetype that is going through, the 12 signs of the zodiac. And I learned recently, if you are thinking of diving into Eastern scripture later, that in the Sanskrit language, there are 12 different names for the sun. And it's interesting because it's
Yeah,
not talking about the other planets, but it's like 12 variations of the sun. Although that could be, describing the same astrological cycle and the
right. It's all
zodiacal wheel.
different ways. It's all deep, deep, deep metaphorical stuff that you have to unpack. You
Yeah.
have to study this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it all tells the same story. There's
It
just
does.
different ways
Yeah.
over time to tell the same exact story.
Yeah. It's
Like,
fascinating,
for
man.
example, they talk about Nibiru being the ninth planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they talk about Nibiru being the ninth planet and the Anunnaki coming from there, right? So people take it to be a literal thing. But do you know what Nibiru actually means in Sumerian?
No.
It means to cross over. It's another realm that happens when you
Oh,
pass.
interesting.
Right? Nibiru is not actually a place. You have to understand etymology. You have to understand numerology, gematria, astrotheology. You have to understand your ancient religions. I can read Hebrew. It helps a lot. You have to be a syncretist. You have
Mm.
to understand many different cross disciplines to understand this. Now the question is, why would they decode? Why would they put everything in there so deeply encoded? And it's because it's not meant for everyone to see. It's
Mm.
not meant for everyone to see. I just found out recently, Jake, that 50%, up to 50% of people on Earth do not have an inner monologue. They do
Oh,
not have a voice in their head.
what?
Yeah, 50% of people. 50% of people. I've had people, I did this video on my channel and I had somebody who doesn't have one. I'll send it to you. You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
read it. It's like they are you ever see the movie Memento?
Memento. No, no. Huh.
Try and see that movie.
Write
It's
that down.
with Guy Pearce. It's Christopher Nolan's first movie.
Oh, okay.
It's got Carrie Ann Moss in it, Joe Pantoliano. Good movie. Um, but what it is, it's a guy with no short-term memory, and the movie is filmed backwards. So like he
Ooh.
gets to a certain point, and then the next scene is the previous scene that leads up to the beginning of the scene, and then the
Wow.
next scene is the previous scene. It's a crazy movie. It's great
Yeah,
though.
that sounds really
But
cool.
that's how basically these people are. Is they don't have a voice in their head, and they just basically they know what they have to do, go from place to place, because you do know that short-term memory and long-term memory come from different parts of the brain.
Hmm. Yeah.
So whereas if you have short-term memory issues, which is usually at the front right here, if there's damage there, um, you retain every skill that you had up until that point, but then you can't make new memories. That's kind of what it's like there. So they know what they have to do. They have to go to work. They have to do this, but it's like they're always surprised by what comes out next. It's crazy.
Oh my God. I mean, this is the NPC topic, not to like, offend
Yeah,
anyone, but
it is
it's the same
100%.
idea. And I'm like, well, what is it? Like, is there too much fluoride in our water? Like, like is it 5G? Like there are so many questions I would have about that. I've never heard of anyone without a monologue, but I'm definitely gonna watch that YouTube video. That sounds frightening, but also fascinating at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
terrifying.
I want to ask you, kind of as a segue to close out in a bit. You've got this eighth book. I haven't been able to read it yet. Hoping it ships soon. I'm really excited, and I wanted to ask you this. When you're writing the eighth, and this is kind of a question for people listening who have already, read you or have been familiar with with what you've been offering to YouTube and
Right.
in a general sense. You don't have to give everything away, but are there other topics that you've been diving into that show up in this book? Anything we can expect, maybe like a trailer of some sorts? Just curious.
Um, Let me read you the back of it. Hold on.
Cool. Okay. This is book number 8, Nail in the Coffin.
Nail the Coffin, guys. It's the Into the Rabbit Hole series. You're never going to find a series like this before. I've got 30, 40 different esoteric sciences, and I teach through story form. It's super fun stories. The characters are young wise asses, so it's like entertaining for newbies.
Yeah.
Nail in the Coffin, Book 8, the continuation of Into the Rabbit Hole. Um, After being shot and dying briefly, Graham heals up and is sent on another impossible journey. The president has been poisoned, and the new president is going back to the old ways of governing, keeping everyone enslaved without knowing they're being enslaved. However, this rabbit hole keeps getting more sinister as layers are peeled back, and his belief that he knew how things truly worked in the world came crashing down like the Twin Towers. Graham must navigate a secret so heinous that it could destroy the world financially.
Oh, damn. So you just brought up near-death experience in a way, and 9/11, the president being poisoned. That's extremely terrifyingly relevant if you consider, the mental state of old Joe back there, but wow. Okay. Well, I'm excited, man. Have people all right, is this something you can buy online? Like, where's the best place where people can
Yeah,
find
you can
your
go. So
book
you can
series?
reach out to me on social media. On Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, I'm Micah Dank. I unfortunately, because of I can't show you it right there, but I've got a box of books, but they're all counted out. See, to just lay with you how it goes, I have to buy author copies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what I do is I have to front a bunch of money, and then I sell these books to get the money back, and then I have to immediately buy more books. So
Yeah.
it's a procedure. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like I'm rolling around in dough with this, but I can tell you this much right now. I can only sell sets because if people were like, oh, if 5 or 6 people order book one, then I'm gonna have like 10 books or 20 books of book two, three, four, and five, and only have like 10 of book one.
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
can't manage that. That's
Gotta
too
get the
much.
set.
I'm at the point right now where I can't manage that.
Yeah.
So I only sell sets. You can get them through me if you reach out to me on social media. My YouTube channel is Micah Dank Truth Bombs. I have 3 playlists. Your best bet on how to navigate the site is to go to the playlist, and here's what I
Mhm.
have. I have my first playlist, which is the astrotheology playlist, which is all my ancient decodings of these ancient texts with this simple astrological cipher that I've come with. Then my second one is interviews, where I have people on that do interviews. I have people on and I do their interviews. Really interesting people. I try to bring the most mind blowing stuff. That's why it's called Truth Bombs. My third playlist is the Truth Bombs. It's 2 to 10 minute videos basically, where I try and blow your mind with information you've never heard. And I have all that, and I have 9 books, and I still have more that I teach. I'm just like a sponge, so I just try and share all this information out. That's what I'm trying to do. I hope Jake that by reading my book series, you've realized why I've had to make it a fiction series.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't really get into trouble if you're writing fiction, but you're able to again drop these breadcrumbs. But no one can try and discredit a fictional story, even though it contains a lot of truth. And a lot of truth is an understatement. There's topics that some people would be afraid to talk about openly, but when they're shrouded in fiction and that fictional narrative, then you're much, much safer.
I am, especially you read book 6, right?
Yeah.
With the whole Bohemian Grove thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Jesus, like that uh disassociative personalities and that is dark, dark stuff. But if Alex Jones was the first guy to kind of bring that out, then it's good to dive into it a little deeper because most
Well, have you
people
discovered yet that Blur Slanders is Alex Jones?
hold up, wait, I've heard of this joke, I guess, that Bill Hicks was Alex Jones, but who is wait, say that
No,
again?
in my book series, Blur Slanders, the guy that they
Oh
are always
yeah, yeah,
listening
yeah,
to,
yeah. He's
the
got his like
Pharisee
radio
guy,
show, right?
he's literally Alex Jones.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see what you mean now. Yeah.
Like
You
this is more truth than fiction completely.
mhm. Yeah, it's kind of funny that you've featured even people that I've personally met, like Mark from my family thinks I'm crazy. It's kind of funny that he's like a a feature in one of your books, and it's there's a lot of cool
Well,
references.
I didn't feature him. I
Yeah,
dedicated one
yeah.
book to him because he got me with Tripoli, which is the first podcast, that tinfoil hat,
Love
one of the
tinfoil
first
hat.
podcasts I ever
Yeah.
did that really opened people up to me.
Mhm.
You know, there's very few people that I respect more than Tripoli. And Mark Steves actually hooked me up with my publicist.
Nice.
You
Oh,
know,
cool.
so I really do appreciate the guy. You know, I am kind of like loyal to him.
Yeah. Shout out,
Um,
Mark.
but yeah, I've got Alex Stein in it because I used to
Yep.
do Conspiracy Castle before he
Conspiracy
became
Castle is
famous.
great.
So I Yeah, so I had Alex Stein on there. We're friends. He has a chapter in one of my books. Rex Bear has a chapter in one of my books. Yeah, so I try and give back, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to say, I really enjoyed that because when you bring up Alex Stein in the book, it is like a podcast interview. It's really cool that there's this back and forth and it very much mirrors
Well,
reality.
so people don't know this, but like in high school and college, I was an Abercrombie store model and I was an actor.
Nice.
So I've studied acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is
Mm.
one of the best acting schools in the entire world. In the world. You know, I went there for 3 4 years. So like I really know how to break down characters. And if you read that Alex Stein chapter, it's literally Alex.
It
Like
really is.
it's
Yeah.
spot on.
I was reading it in his voice basically, which is a lot of
Yeah, that's what
fun.
I want you to do.
Yeah, exactly, man. Well, you totally nailed it. Nail in the coffin, book 8. I'm really excited, man. And just for a quick, if people want to go on YouTube, I did recently check out a video on the Book of Samuel with Dagon. I'm just gonna leave it at that. If you want to expand on it, otherwise, I want people to go and check it out for themselves. But this is always fun, man. I love chatting with you, Micah, and I'm thankful that you came back on, man.
Yeah,
It's been
you're one of the good
blessed.
people, Jake, man.
Appreciate you.
Listen, I will come on your show forever. You
Right
know,
on, man.
you're very happy. You're a very good dude.
Thank you, man. Well, I'm excited. I'm happy for you, and I want to wish you the absolute best today, man. Good to see you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, you too. I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.